Craft matters. In small ways, like how a coffee is brewed. And in not so small ways, like how your money is cared for. Which is why for 160 years, UBS has elevated banking to a craft. Tailoring unique strategies that combine human expertise with the latest technologies. All happening across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs. With you at the heart of it all. UBS. Advice is our craft.
You're listening to The Globalist, first broadcast on the 4th of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Globalist in association with UBS. Live from London, this is The Globalist. I'm Vincent McAviney. Coming up, how close is the US to striking Venezuela?
Anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
So not necessarily just Venezuela?
No, not just Venezuela, no.
Why is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu protecting Orthodox Jews from IDF conscription? A new robotic search will attempt to solve the mystery of flight MH370's disappearance, and we get the latest from the international luxury travel market in Cannes.
I think that idea of romance, nostalgia, of the traditional kind of innkeeper who's part of the experience is something that you see in a lot of our hotels that hasn't gone away, that I hope won't ever go away.
Plus, we'll leaf through the day's papers and the latest news from Japan. That's all ahead on The Globalist, live from London. First, a look at what else is happening in the news. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will meet the head of Ukraine's National Security Council, Rustem Umerov, for talks in Miami later today, following his meeting with Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Hundreds of photos and videos of Jeffrey Epstein's Caribbean island home have been released by Democrats in the US Congress, ahead of the full release of the files on the well-connected sex trafficker. And Eurovision organisers and participating countries will meet today to debate whether Israel should be allowed to continue in the competition, amid protests over Gaza and accusations of unfair voting practices. Stay tuned to Monocle Radio throughout the day for more on those stories, but first, there's growing speculation surrounding President Trump's potential plans for a military attack on Venezuela. At the weekend, Trump declared the South American country's airspace closed, something he does not have the power to do. Meanwhile, there's been a build-up of US assets in the Caribbean, most notably the deployment of the world's biggest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford. Well, to discuss all this, we're joined now by Antonio Sampio, expert on Latin American politics and society, and H.J. Mai, Washington, D.C. reporter. Antonio, if I can start with you. So, Trump, do we think, is he trying to oust President Nicolas Maduro by force? What is going on here?
So there are a few possibilities about what Trump wants to achieve with these military assets in the region. It seems clear to me that there is an element of performance in his sending of warships, in that the war on drugs has chosen that topic as his tough guy persona, as his cause, and it's a relatively easy and simple war for him to achieve. He's in a difficult situation in terms of the traditional sort of conservative portrayal of the warlike president, because he's campaigned on what the conservatives say is the Democrats' involvement of the U.S. and previous Republicans' involvement of the U.S. in foreign wars that has drained, the U.S. resources, and they haven't focused on internal, American first policies. So he's in a tough situation here, and the war on drugs provides him with a cause for him to send warships and claim the protection of the U.S. populace. Obviously, the Venezuelan regime is also a long-standing sort of rival and sort of enemy or target for U.S. foreign policy. So there is an element of that. But I think it's safe to say that they will try to avoid putting boots on the ground.
HJ, I mean, we've touched on it there. When the president ran, a big part of his MAGA platform was America First, ending foreign wars and interventions. But he did have a lot to say about the sort of flood of drugs over the border into the States as well. So why is he doing this? And is he managing to take MAGA with him or not?
Well, it depends who you ask, but I think, he tries to sell it as America First by stopping, that flow of drugs. He thinks protecting Americans, saving the lives of Americans, that have been, killed, especially, by drugs like fentanyl, cocaine over the years, with drug overdoses, heroin, those type of things. He thinks, or his administration thinks, that by, conducting those strikes in the Caribbean and in the East Pacific, that actually aligns with his America First philosophy. So it really depends. So far, the majority of MAGA is still behind him when it comes to this. I think there are other topics where issues might be a little different, but when it comes to the strikes on those alleged drug smuggling boats, and now his promise to maybe even conduct targeted strikes on operations and targets in Venezuela, I think the majority is still behind him.
And hey Shay, I mean, are we talking just about an entirely aerial operation, or would we see boats deployed to the shore, boots on the ground, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think knowing where Trump stands with boots on the ground, that seems highly unlikely. I think we can see, targeted strikes. It might not be as as powerful or as involved as, for example, the U.S. strike on those nuclear facilities in Iran. But that's something you can expect. As both of you mentioned, obviously the biggest aircraft carrier is in the area down there, so targeted strikes with some of American fighter jets. I think that's the most likely thing that we could see in the coming days.
Antonio, how would other Latin American nations react if the US did go ahead with airstrikes? And do you think what would be their aim?
I think it greatly depends on the type of airstrikes. I think there are two possibilities there. One is that they will use airstrikes and missiles from the warships to target only cartel targets, alleged cartel targets. And the other possibility, which is very different and will affect the response of Latin American countries, is whether they would target regime targets, Venezuelan government targets. So these two are massively different. But I think that, for instance, the major actor in the region, which is Brazil, has traditionally had a very hostile position towards any type of military intervention. So it will try, and especially in its region, which has been free of conflict, of war, interstate war, for a long time, with the exception, of a different type of civil war in Colombia. So Brazil is in a tight rope there, because it's negotiating with Trump the tariffs, the very high tariffs that Trump has posed. So it's trying, I think it will try to not confront Trump so much on that, unless it really comes to a major sort of escalation of hostilities there.
And in terms of where this has come from, its origin, trying to track down in the administration, how significant do you think is the Florida connection? I mean, Donald Trump, he's got his base in Mar-a-Lago. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is a former senator from Florida. There is a big Venezuelan community there. Is that a part of this?
I believe so. I believe that the Latino community, your reporter in DC might know better than me, but the Latino community in the U.S. is very, and especially in Florida, has many Venezuelans who are deeply resentful of what the Maduro regime has done in Venezuela, and the restrictions on freedom of expression. These are issues that are very dear to the Latino community in the U.S., and especially in Florida, which, as I understand, have moved strongly towards the Republican Party in recent years.
Hey, Shay, if I can come to you about the strikes that we've seen so far in the Caribbean that the administration claims are drug trafficking boats. There was this double tap incident, so-called, where after the first strike, 2 survivors clinging onto the wreckage were struck in a second pass. There's a lot of legal unease, even in the Republican Party, about this. Could Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth be in trouble, do we think? Or would even Donald Trump maybe sort of throw him under the bus and get rid of him over this?
Well, that doesn't seem to be the case right now, but there's, as you mentioned, there's definitely a lot of unease right now. I mean, we've seen a bipartisan support in Congress, for a hearing, classified hearing, to get more information on what actually transpired, who gave the official order, the White House and the Pentagon came out and basically said, that it was not the secretary who gave the order for the second strike and to kill those survivors. It was an admiral. And so I think, there will be an investigation, whether there will be a public hearing, we don't know. But there's definitely a lot of unease. Democrats obviously have come out and basically accuse, the administration of committing war crimes, and the whole legality of those boat strikes in general is obviously very much in question. So, there's a lot of unease at the moment. And,
And just on that point, I mean, Hegseth as well is under pressure, though. This investigation into the sort of Signal Gate, that incident where he added journalists, family members to a Signal chat on national security issues.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So besides, conducting or ordering the second strike, today, or in this case, yesterday in the U.S., the Inspector General for the Department of Defense, or I guess we have to call it now Department of War, if you want to listen to the administration, came out with the report and basically, said that, Hegseth, acted irresponsibly. He potentially put soldiers in harm's way, for sharing those detailed information about this operation against the Houthis in the Signal chat in March. So we'll see if this continues. Obviously Hegseth came out and said, totally exonerated, nothing happened here, didn't share anything classified. But those are definitely ongoing stories, and Hegseth has been under pressure basically since he took over the Pentagon.
And Antonio, final question for you. I mean, earlier this week, Pope Leo spoke out about this attack. He spent much of his life, obviously, in South America, in Peru. Catholicism is having a bit of a resurgence in America, most notably with sort of Vice President J.D. Vance. I think Marco Rubio as well is a Catholic. Might this impact the decision, do you think? And also, might it prompt more of a response from South American countries?
Well, the Catholic Church is very strong in Latin America, and it might provide some sort of diplomatic line of contact. I think that the Pope may play a role in case of an escalation of hostilities. I think this is especially, likely, or the role of the Pope and the Catholic Church might be especially important in case there is really one of the two scenarios I mentioned, that they're going for the regime and targeting regime targets in some sort of negotiation of the exit of Maduro and his allies from power. But again, I think that they will try as hard as they can to stay in power, because if they leave, they face severe prosecution. They are wanted by the US for drug trafficking and, accusations of all sorts.
And just very, very briefly, I mean, what do you think could follow? Chaos, or is there anyone waiting in the wings that could take over in Venezuela?
I think the opposition in Venezuela has been for a long time discussing this and in some ways preparing. There are several, people even in the Venezuelan diaspora who are, have been training in a way to be, ministers of this and ministers of that. So, but it all depends on how this is going to happen and whether, there's going to be some sort of military resistance and possibly even a sort of armed conflict in Venezuela.
Well, one to watch for certain. Antonio Sampaio, expert on Latin American politics and security, and H.J. Mai in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. This is The Globalist. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing a parliamentary revolt over contentious plans to conscript ultra-Orthodox Haredi men into military service. The move has widespread support amongst the rest of Israel's population, of whom men are required to serve for 2 years, 8 months, and women for 2 years in the IDF. Opposition leaders are accusing Netanyahu of trying to thwart the bill's passage to placate members of his right-wing coalition. To discuss, we're joined by Yossi Meckelberg, Senior Consulting Fellow at the MENA programme at Chatham House. Yossi, thank you for speaking to us. Can you explain exactly what this plan is and what's happened?
Good morning. I think we need to look at the history of exemption of ultra-Orthodox youth from military service. This goes back to the inception of the State of Israel, when those who study the scripts were exempt. But at the time it was around 400. Now we are talking about tens of thousands. And their representative in the Knesset, this is part of, you can call it the perks they give their voters for many, many years not to serve, while other 18 years old, men and women, for men 3 years service, for women 2 years service, are by law conscripted. And, this was a point of contention in Israeli politics for many years, but even more so over the last 2 years, when not only conscript, but also reserve service soldiers served up to 300, 400 days, and there is shortage of 20,000 soldiers. And the ultra-Orthodox party still insists that, only very small number of ultra-Orthodox youth will serve. They left the coalition but supported from the outside, but they threatened in case a law won't pass, and they will stop supporting the government. To make it more complex, the Supreme Court's already ruled that if they won't serve, some of the benefits that they get in terms of budgets should be cut. So
let's just unpack that a bit. I mean, what is the proposal for the Haredi men? Because it's not the women, it's just the men who might have to do service. Is it the sort of 2 years and 8 months that the rest of 18-year-old men in Israel have to do?
Yeah, which will extend to 3 years due to the needs as a result of the war. But still, not all of them will serve, but the benefits will be restored, which are benefits that other citizens in Israel are not gaining when it comes to, for instance, helping with childcare, supporting every rabbinical seminar with thousands of shekel, help them with cheaper accommodation. So this creates a big, great resentment among those who both serve but pay taxes, since the ultra-Orthodox are one of the least productive in terms of the economy in the
economic output. Yeah, and I mean, times have changed. You've had the sacrifice of Israel's youth over the past 2 years, but has the public attitude shifted just because of that, or is there also a sort of realization of the demographics here that, as you say, this has gone from a few hundred to tens of thousands of people, economically not very productive, taking a lot out of the state without giving much back?
And that's exactly the point. You summed it up. And I think this always, since I remember, this was a point of contention in the Israeli society. But as demography changed, because the percentage of ultra-Orthodox is growing all the time, the average ultra-Orthodox family has 6.6 children compared to less than 2 among the secular. It means the burden, of military service and on the taxpayer is growing all the time.
And so, I mean, why is Benjamin Netanyahu doing this? I mean, he knows that this is not going to be popular with the Israeli people. Is he just desperate to cling on to his coalition until the elections next year?
Yeah, desperation is the key word. He also the coalition. He wants to call election in the right time for him. Whether it has to do with his request to be pardoned, which was basically stopping his trial, to prevent a state inquest into the October 7, 2023 disaster. So he's looking for the right time. And he also knows that even if the election, if he's doing well, even if by October, he will still need the ultra-Orthodox to form the next coalition if he is in a position to do so.
And Yossi, you yourself had to do the service when you were young. Some citizens might say on principle, everyone should have to do it now to protect Israel. But are the men who would be put up for this, who've lived, incredibly sheltered and traditional lives, actually suited to this kind of serving, do you think?
I think, everyone in society live their own bubbles and they all shelter life in one way or another. but the military is an equalizer, and there must be equality. You know, you have the rights, then you have also to fulfill your duties towards the country. So I don't think that one way or another. I think there can be a complete overall, for instance, who is in the attitude, the approach towards service. It can be civil, service. It can be military service, but it has to, at the end of the day, to serve the needs of the country, not a particular community that decided they don't want to do that. And because of their political power, they can blackmail basically the society.
Yossi Meckelberg, thank you very much. Still to come in the programme.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
The final communications from Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 before it disappeared over a decade ago. But now the search is set to resume. Is there hope for an answer to one of aviation's biggest mysteries? This is The Globalist.
Craft is a matter of perspective, a unique outlook, an obsessive attention to detail. With UBS's Chief Investment Office House View, we're focused on identifying the latest investment opportunities and market risks to help you achieve your financial goals, so you get the big picture broken down into thought-provoking insights. Delivered daily and curated by over 200 globally connected, locally active analysts. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Well, let's continue now with today's newspapers. And joining me in the studio is Latika Book, the writer-at-large for the Australian news publication The Nightly. Let's kick things off then. What's caught your eye in the papers?
Look, a really interesting story just published in the Financial Times by Dimitri Sevastopoulos in Washington, D.C., who covers the US-China beat. And he's just put up a story saying that the US, or the Trump administration, has halted its own plans to sanction members of China's Ministry of State Security over a massive cyber espionage campaign that the Chinese waged against US officials and US telecom networks called Salt Typhoon. Now, you might remember this. This hack was extraordinary, and some of my own sources who've been caught up in this tell me what we know publicly is really only the tip of the iceberg of how far the Chinese penetrated into their systems. So you would expect a very serious response from the United States, which of course is locked in great power competition with China. Well, Donald Trump, of course, the president of peace, we use that in quote marks, he has been pursuing aggressively a trade deal and a grand bargain with Xi Jinping. And he negotiated some of that on the sidelines of the APEC summit in South Korea. And now the suggestion coming out of the United States, certainly amongst the security community, is that Donald Trump is willing to sacrifice national security in order to salvage some trade deals. But there is one important line which I wanted to read out to you here, which is that they believe that some of this positioning is that the US is trying to ensure, quote, stability until the US reduces China's dominance in rare earths. And I think that's really interesting because maybe there's a calculation made that until we can line up all our ducks and be really ready to take China on and use some actions where if we have to back it up, we can and we will. Maybe we're not ready now. I thought that was a very insightful line in Dimitri's copy.
And the other part of this as well is that mass building of a TCMS, the Taiwanese superconductor company in Arizona, trying to get that online so that if China attacks, of course, Taiwan, that we're not suddenly out of those conductors as we saw in the pandemic. That can have devastating effects. I mean, this story really underlines the problem that all countries are having with China. I mean, Macron's in Beijing at the moment, isn't he, trying to sort this out, trade, but also security concerns. The UK tying itself in knots over whether or not China is a threat or a sort of rival or what it's doing, and the US putting pressure on the UK not to allow China to build an embassy because of concerns it'll be built right over the sort of the cables connecting the financial system in the City of London. I mean, everyone is sort of tying themselves in knots in this, aren't they?
I think more broadly what's happening is that the coalition that assembled under Trump 1.0 that took a stronger and I would say a more coordinated line on how to collectively deal with Chinese dominance, that has now completely disintegrated. And the North Star that was the United States in leading that charge is perhaps giving up some of that field on its own part. And that's a brave new world that the West finds itself in, because if the United States is behaving in ways that are similar to China, imposing unfair trade tariffs, for example, in breach of world trade agreements, and doing that indiscriminately against friends and foes, well, then you're in a really different environment for other partners and smaller partners trying to work out how they respond.
Well, shifting to Miami now, where there'll be talks later today between US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and officials from Kyiv after his trip to Moscow. What can we expect there?
Well, I think maybe another bout of Groundhog Day, because it seems like the talks are, again, disintegrating into endless back and forth, with the Kremlin insisting on its maximalist gains and Ukraine saying we can't possibly accept this, Europe as well, for whatever voice Europe has in these talks. And then we go to the man himself, Donald Trump, the president of peace, in quote marks, saying that he wants to end this war. Now his latest line is that having sent his son-in-law Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to Moscow this week for long talks with the Kremlin, he's now saying that he's not sure whether this deal will happen. And he can't say what will happen out of these meetings, although he was sounding quite positive about what took place in the Kremlin. Adding again, it takes two to tango, underlining that the United States does not see Ukraine as a victim, as a sovereign nation that has been illegally invaded. Under Trump's terms, he just sees conflict that he wants resolved, and he's very agnostic about how those terms are brokered, in fact, possibly even leaning towards Russia.
And another Trump rebrand of a US institution.
Yeah, this is a very Trumpian story. So we have, during the Doge era, Doge goes and seizes control of a building called the US Institute of Peace HQ in DC. Now, I've never heard of this building. I don't think you have.
No.
Doubt our listeners will. But it's become the latest of maybe a quasi-culture war or a Donald Trump ego display, because just before that he's due to have a ceremony with the presidents of Rwanda and the DRC, workers have been busy installing Donald J. Trump's name on the exterior of the building. So it now reads Donald J. Trump United States Institute of Peace, as opposed to US Institute of Peace.
Anything to get that Nobel.
I mean, maybe we're in a world where he can just start putting Nobel Peace Prize winner up himself.
Exactly.
Self-declare it.
And finally, we've seen lots of images of this grand new museum in Egypt. It took over a decade to build. I'm particularly enjoying the fact that there's all these sort of water reflection pools under statues and people keep falling into them. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay.
It sounds like you're spending a lot of time on your social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they want one particular item back, though, that is right here in London.
Yeah, this is really interesting because you don't hear so much about the Egyptians wanting the treasures back. You hear a lot about the Greeks and the marbles, of course. But now we have a suggestion that perhaps the Rosetta Stone should be returned to Egypt because it was taken during a time when it was not quite legal. Well, according to Mohammed Khalid, who's spoken to the Times of London. And he goes on to say he accepts that tens of thousands of artefacts held by the British Museum were legally taken from Egypt, and they're part of, interesting quote, London's identity, even though they belong to both countries. But he says that the Rosetta Stone is not one of them. I must say, when I was a 17-year-old girl and I came to the UK, the first thing I did was go and check out the Rosetta Stone. My mind was absolutely blown by seeing this thing in real life that I learnt about in books. So, he's right to say this is a huge calling card for London and for Britain, and maybe it should be for Egypt. Now, Mr. Khaled says, of course, we would love it to be returned because Egyptians have never seen it. And there are lots of voices in Egypt thinking about arguing for its return. And the clause that he uses, so you have to be a real history buff to get this, I think, but he says that it's different because this was taken when Napoleon was defeated by the British and Ottoman forces. And under that treaty, the British Museum became, the Rosetta Stone became the property of the British under the terms of the Treaty of Alexandria in 1801. So there's a lot of, historical caveats. I think this might be a little bit hard to prosecute, but we'll see.
We'll see. And just before you go, do you know what the oldest structure is in Egypt? In London? Think Egypt.
Wait. Is it the obelisk that's down on Embankment?
Cleopatra's Needle. It's nothing indigenous. It is Cleopatra's Needle.
I knew you were going to try and trick me, so I thought laterally.
Very clever, very clever. Well, Latika Burke, thank you very much. You're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Now, here's what else we're keeping an eye on today. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will meet the head of Ukraine's National Security Council, Rustem Umerov, for talks in Miami today on a peace plan. The meeting comes after Witkoff spent almost 5 hours with President Putin in Moscow on Tuesday, negotiations which the Kremlin said produced no compromise on ending the war. Hundreds of images and videos of Jeffrey Epstein's Caribbean island home have been released by Democrats in the US Congress, ahead of the full release of the files on the well-connected sex trafficker. The images include a spa and a medical facility, as Americans wait for the Epstein files to be released, as promised by President Trump. South Korean authorities are developing a mobile app for stalking victims to track in real time the location of their stalkers who will be tagged. Stalking is a growing concern in the country after a string of high-profile crimes. It's hoped the new app will allow victims to evacuate to safety. And Eurovision organisers and participating countries will debate whether Israel should be allowed to continue in the competition, amid protests over the way its government conducted its war in Gaza and accusations of unfair voting practices. Countries including Ireland, Spain and the Netherlands have said they will boycott Eurovision if Israel participates. But Germany has indicated it will pull out if Israel is excluded. This is The Globalist. Stay tuned. Now, for a look behind the headlines, the Hong Kong fire that engulfed 8 tower blocks and killed at least 150 people continues to reverberate in the community, even more so with local elections in Hong Kong set for this weekend. Monocle's Carlotta Rebello is in Hong Kong for the MIPIM Real Estate Fair in the city. She spoke with Donald Choi, Managing Director and Deputy Chairman of Hong Kong's Urban Renewal Authority, on the Tai Po fire and lessons for the city.
I think it's a tragedy that affected not only the Tai Po residents but the whole community. I think we are shocked, and the tragedy and fatalities of the fire is something that we definitely would not want to see a repeat in our city. So the city, apart from supporting all the affected stakeholders, we are actually already looking into the future to see how this type of tragedy can be prevented. And again, there are talks about, is it unique to high-density city? I think the answer is no, because if you look at, earlier this year, the fire in LA, it happened in a low-density community as well. So it's all about the awareness of the risk, the proper precautionary measures that have been implemented, and importantly for professionals is really to use their professional knowledge to ensure that the construction, they are safe. And it's not only at the very beginning of the construction, but throughout the lifetime of the building. So from operation to maintenance, of the procedures and precautionary measure, we should actually be very careful with all the works going on in living environment.
Does it actually make you hopeful that there could be good change to come from this tragedy then, when it comes to the way we build in the city, the way safety is taken when it comes to construction practices?
Well, I think it's a lesson that we need to take to our heart. I think, if we fail to notice the shortcoming and repeat it in future, there is no excuse.
That was Donald Choi of Hong Kong's Urban Renewal Authority speaking with Monocle's Carlotta Rebello. This is The Globalist. now. It is 15:34 in Kuala Lumpur and 8:34 in Zurich. It's one of aviation's greatest mysteries. What happened to Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which veered off course and vanished from radar during a routine flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on the 8th of March 2014. Previous multinational investigations have failed to find the wreckage, but now an Anglo-American marine robotics company, Ocean Infinity, will resume the search for an initial period of 55 days. To discuss, we're joined now by Adam Hancock, a journalist based in Singapore who covers Southeast Asia and has covered the search of MH370 extensively. Adam, I know you're in Bali right now, but apparently you're working hard there. That sounds pretty lovely right now. This new search, what will it involve and how will it differ from previous efforts?
Yeah, well, it's kind of been called a new search, but it technically isn't really, because it's the same company that actually started a search last year, but it was called off after a short amount of time because of poor weather conditions. So they're kind of coming back to a search that they started last year. We don't know the exact area where this search will take place. We know it will be in the southern Indian Ocean, but exact details haven't been released. But there has been some media reporting, and there was back in March when Ocean Infinity resumed this search, that it was going to be in a roughly 15,000 square kilometre area of the southern Indian Ocean that is yet to be searched. In terms of what they can do differently, well, obviously technology is advancing all the time. So the ability to search large areas of water, particularly, areas of the ocean that are quite difficult to search because of the weather conditions, because of the currents, but also because of just how deep the water is. They have new equipment, obviously new technology, AI, etc., which they can use. Also, as well, there's new analysis which can be done on the data that already exists. So some of the debris that has been found from the plane, they can do something called drift modeling, which is where they look at the debris, they try and work out like how far it's drifted, where it's come from, the temperature of water that it's come from. And also they can reanalyze the satellite data, which they do have from when the plane disappeared. So I think they're going to be looking in a new area using new technology. And Ocean Infinity, the robotics company who are doing this search, obviously they're going to hope to find something.
In terms of theories of what happened to the aircraft, I mean, there have been over the years some outlandish claims, but is there now, with the distance of 11 years, a more settled hypothesis?
Yeah, I think the general consensus is that the plane diverted from its intended direction, and it sort of turned back on itself and it ended up somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. That seems to be, from all the experts who've looked into this, that seems to be the kind of the working theory right now, is that it's landed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Exactly why that happens, nobody knows. There was an investigation that was ran by the Malaysian government. They came to no conclusion or no official conclusion about what actually happened, but they did say that it's likely that the controls of the planes were deliberately manipulated to take it off course rather than any kind of external factors. But in terms of what actually happened, obviously there's wild speculation, many theories. Many people have pointed fingers at the pilot. Many people have discussed the fact that he had, flight simulator equipment at home and was practicing the route. But really, it's just lack of evidence which has opened the void. But yeah, I think that general consensus is that it is somewhere in the Indian Ocean, but it is very much like needle and haystack territory in terms of finding it.
Yeah, it's just a huge area to find. If they were able to locate the wreckage, though, on the seabed, and they found the flight recorder, after all those years underwater, would the data still be recoverable to sort of finally ascertain what happened?
I think that's a question as well. There's no clear evidence that it will be, intact, or they'll be able to actually draw any information from it because it will have been undersea for so long. I mean, obviously these black boxes are intended to survive all sorts of things, but even if they do find the wreckage, if it will actually answer any questions is hard to tell. I mean, obviously for the families, it will be a huge step. They just want some form of closure. They've been pushing for an investigation for so long. I was out in Kuala Lumpur last March on the 10-year anniversary of the plane going missing, and all the family members I spoke to, it was just the same message. They were just determined that they were going to get an answer. Obviously at this stage, all hope has been given up of finding anyone alive, but it's more just finding out what happened. And they also frame it of an angle of aviation safety going forward as well. I mean, at the end of the day, a plane's gone missing and can't really have that,
Well, you've prompted my final question. A lot of people at the time were in disbelief that a modern aircraft with all that technology could be lost in this way, that they, wouldn't have the sort of transmissions from the black box. Have there been any changes in the decades since to prevent this from reoccurring?
I don't think there's been too many changes, to be honest. I don't think too much has come out of it, really, in a way. Like the aviation industry hasn't dramatically changed because of this incident, as far as I'm aware, anyway. I mean, it may just have to be one of those almost unexplained mysteries that it's hard to really get anything from it in terms of making too many changes, because they don't know what happened. So almost how can you react to that? How can you respond to that? I mean, there were questions about the air traffic controllers in Vietnam and handing over to Malaysia, and maybe something was missed there or more could have been done. And certainly that process of air traffic controls handing over planes, as they call it, between different locations, that has certainly been looked at. But yeah, in terms of, because there's just no actual explanation as to what happened, there's you could point to the pilots, as I mentioned, but there was no clear and obvious mental stress or financial issues or anything. So it's hard to come from this any kind of realistic resolution until the plane is found and they can actually work out what happened and maybe find a way to stop it happening again.
Adam Hancock, thank you very much. This is The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Now, the Monocle Christmas market will return to Tokyo this weekend at our store in the Tomigaya district, so it's a good time to check in on the latest Japanese news. To bring us up to date, we're joined by Elizabeth Beattie, business and economics correspondent at the Japan Times. Elizabeth, good to have you on the programme. What's caught your eye?
Hey there. Well, there's several interesting big stories coming out of Japan at the moment. One is the aftermath of these high-profile cyber attacks, which have happened this year. So there's two really big attacks which have garnered a lot of attention, and that's Asahi, the beer company, which was hacked and it had to suspend orders. It was even stuck with their team having to provide orders via fax or via phone. So they were really quite crippled by this. And the other big company that was hacked is called a School, which is a household goods company, but it also handles order logistics for Muji. So they were also very badly hacked. And in the aftermath, there's been a bit of discussion and interest in whether Japanese companies need to enhance their cybersecurity, essentially. So that's quite a big topic of conversation.
Yeah, and here in the UK, we've had these huge hacks this year on Jaguar Land Rover and Marks and Spencer as well. There has been some government assistance programs from intelligence services. Is that something that the Japanese government do as well to try and help?
This is something which has been discussed here yet. Actually, Japan is bringing in new cybersecurity legislation next year, and that is bringing Japan up to certain other international standards, requiring companies to report when they've suffered a hack. In terms of the economic impact or economic support, at the moment, the companies are being quite tight-lipped about what that is. They've both pushed their earnings report and they've acknowledged that it's going to have an impact. In the case of Asahi, the beer company, all its competitors were doing very brisk business. So it's a little bit hard to know what their economic standing will be in the aftermath.
And turning to a new Japanese film, which has been a big box office success.
Yeah, so this is the film Kokuho. Have you seen it before?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Oh, okay. Well, in Japan, it's kind of the talk of the town. It's about kabuki, essentially. And kokuho means national treasure. It's the film Japan has put forward as their official Oscar entry for 2026. And it essentially follows the son of a Yakuza boss, and it's his ups and downs and ambition as he becomes a big kabuki star. It's 3 hours long, and it's about a very ancient art form. So perhaps not a stereotypical box office success, but it's really been such a hit here. And I think some of it is because it's so sumptuously shot. There's these incredible scenes of the kabuki performance, and it really makes you want to go see kabuki. It really brings alive that art form.
Oh, one to watch. We're about to hit this sort of Oscar movies season, aren't we? And there's been some bear news.
Yes, and you'll have to forgive me. Being a New Zealander, bear is a bit of a bear is a word we get mocked for our pronunciation. So I hope you can understand me. But yes, bears have been also in the headline here. They've come up in conversation quite frequently because this year has been the worst year for attacks on record for Japan. The death toll has been 13 from April until now, but more than 200 people have been injured. There's been thousands of sightings. So I recently went hiking with some friends, and everyone had bells on their backpacks to ward off bears. There's a real concern about it because obviously they're very dangerous creatures, and they're a lot more visible than they usually would be.
Well, Elizabeth Beattie of the Japan Times, thank you very much, and stay safe on your hikes. You're listening to Monocle Radio.
IQ, EQ, and AI. 3 components key to the craft of innovation at UBS. Because to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving age, you need a partner with decades of experience, endless passion for the work, and a finger on the pulse of leading technologies, bridging human expertise with artificial intelligence, all to elevate you. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Well, we head to Cannes now, home to the international luxury travel market this week. Monocle Radio has a delegation on site meeting some of the leading movers and shakers in the industry. And we're joined first of all from Cannes by Monocle Radio's senior producer, Laura Kramer. Laura, how's it on the South Coast?
Hello, bonjour, Vinny. It's been such an incredible few days. It's about to wrap up today, but still a lot of meetings ahead. I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm not a betting woman, but if I were to say, I think it'd be a record year that they've done, because so far they've packed in more than 100,000 meetings into over the days here at the Palais, more than 2,500 exhibitors. And yet it all feels very breezy to navigate, I have to say, because it's all been very elegant from the minute that you land in Nice. ILTM is posted everywhere. Past security, you're nicely whisked off on a shuttle straight to Cannes. They've got shuttles then coming back to the airport later today, so it's been good. And I have to say also, I have never been to Cannes in the winter because I've always seen it in the sun because I was there for the Cannes Film Festival 3 years running. That is a very hectic affair, unlike ILTM. However, Vinny, I have to say, I did spot a celebrity. Yes.
Ooh, who was it?
Star from Midori House, no less. Happy to announce I'm joined in our pop-up studio by Monocle's own commercial director, Rebecca Alderson, making her radio debut from the Croisette.
What an introduction. Thanks, Laura. Wow, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm usually on the other side of the fishbowl.
Yeah, Vinny, Rebecca and I have been working. We've been having a lot of interviews and some champagne along the way, of course, lots of meetings.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's been great. It's our second year here as Monocle in this iteration. We've got the big booth. We've got a mini Monocle retail corner. It's my third year here. And it's been so great to have a home in the Palais. I think, we've had people come by for amazing interviews and conversations. We're right next to the Cannes X bar, which is, as you say, excellent proximity to a glass of champagne. And yes, we're a publisher, but we're also in the business of hospitality and travel ourselves. To be able to host and sort of welcome people into our little spot has been really fun. And then for me, it's been great just to meet everyone, to catch up with people that we met last year, reflect on projects that we cooked up in this very spot. We've just wrapped a lovely campaign with Conrad, relaunching the 135. And it's also great to get a good read of the industry. There seems to be a lot of optimism and growth and so many hotel openings and moves into branded residences, going from land to sea, which is one of the main themes for this year. So yeah, I mean, I've had a great time. I'm flying home in a few hours, but I'm very sad to be leaving our little moment in Cannes.
Yeah, and I mean, Monocle's doing so much all the time. There's more magazines, more books, more emails and things. Rebecca, more hotels becoming aware of us and wanting to engage with us?
Yeah, I think what's been really, really lovely is people passing by and just saying, oh gosh, I'm such a fan of Monocle. I didn't realize you guys were here, or I didn't realize you guys had retail, or I wasn't aware that you were doing coffee table books. I think people find Monocle through so many different avenues. You know, you might just be an avid radio listener and then discover that we have a whole host of publications and beautiful coffee table books. So I think it's really interesting to sort of identify the different entry points to our brand in the travel industry, but also have the chance to show people the amazing array of beautiful photography that we have that really lends itself to this industry, to the, you know, really beautiful, emotional travel content in Confect, which has been a joy to talk about, to the Escapist Annual, which we are closing this week to any listening advertisers. If you want to get a page and it's not too late.
Good plug.
So that will be on newsstands from the 28th of December, all of next year as well. So yeah, from a publications and branding standpoint, it's been fab.
Well, Laura, it's your last day today. You've done lots of interviews, and listeners are in that period of the year where they're starting to think about booking their adventures for 2026. So what are the trends that you're hearing about?
Well, as Rebecca just said, ocean travel is really huge. That's not stopping. A lot of people are leaning into that. Alpine escapes, of course, with the planet getting warmer. We've been seeing this as a trend that's happening more. A few brands opening properties in the mountains. And one thing that we keep hearing about is so many openings in Italy, Rome especially. We have like at least 3 or 4 properties that we've been hearing about. It's a very exciting renaissance for Rome, if you'd like. One of the challenges, though, that we've been hearing about is although the industry has really rebounded in terms of trips post-COVID, they still haven't really in terms of attracting and holding on to talent. So recruitment still a bit of an issue for the industry. However, I do have to say the mood is very jolly here on the ground and everybody's very excited for what 2026 has in store.
That sounds good. Well, I was in Rome myself in September and I can thoroughly recommend. Well, Laura Kramer and Rebecca Alderson, thank you very much. Let's hear now one of Laura's interviews with Sarah Doyle, VP of Global Brand Leader at Design Hotels, which has a global portfolio of more than 300 independently owned boutique properties. Laura kicked things off by asking what defines the brand.
What's special about our hotels is that the design concept, the experience concept, all comes from an owner who had a passion and a vision for what they brought to life for their property. So every hotel is different. No hotel is alike. Some are one room. We actually have a hotel with one room. It's in Tokyo, all the way up to, just over 100, but typically in the 50 key range, maybe a little bit less.
I would imagine that for boutique hotels especially, the art, the design, the storytelling aspect must be so crucial for the brand, its soul. Do you think that maybe we've seen some hotels lost their romance?
Yeah, I think a lot of hotels, forget that you're going to stay in a hotel not just to sleep, but to experience. And every moment in that hotel is meaning. And that's where I think a lot of our owners really take that next step and get involved in that meaning. I have some owners who are also with us who have a property in Italy. And at the end of the night, they're a couple, a husband and wife, who they're sitting around the bonfire sharing stories with the guests. So I think that idea of romance, nostalgia, of the traditional kind of innkeeper who's part of the experience is something that you see in a lot of our hotels that hasn't gone away, that I hope won't ever go away.
And I think it's a different touch point on sustainability. We keep hearing about the green tech and the green fuels and everything, but this is surely a very important part of that conversation.
Of course. That's actually part of the criteria when we bring in a new property. They have to meet 7 out of 10 of our sustainability principles. And quite frankly, we wouldn't probably talk to a potential owner who didn't care about what their impact is. So from a values perspective, we need to be aligned. And the brand was always born as this brand that believed in experimental hospitality, so new ways of doing things. So of course that now means, new ways of delivering an excellent experience, but ensuring that we're not doing things to harm the planet.
And how many openings have you had in 2025? Tell us about your 2025.
Yeah, 2025 has been a busy year. We've had about 20 openings all over the world. We are in hundreds of destinations now. We are opening many hotels again in 2026. We have a hotel opening that I'm very excited about called Esh Hotel. This is in Costa Rica, and it's in this lush, beautiful kind of tropical area where you're very green and zen, which is going to be, I think, something people will love. Again, small, 29 keys rooms, which is, it's quite average for design hotels. We also have a hotel opening in Bali. So this is by the same owners who have a hotel with us in Italy, in Palazzo Danieli, which is a gorgeous property, and they're opening a hotel called Magia de Uma in Bali. And this is tiny. It's 14 rooms, kind of an estate feel, and it's amongst rice fields, tropical gardens, and it used to be a family home. So a little bit of a hideaway for the family, which is now turning into a property. And then we have Dominican Republic coming up as well, and our first hotel in Venice, which I'm so excited about, called Elizabeth Unique in Venice, and that's opening in May, June 26.
We've been hearing quite a few people talking about their move into Italy this coming year. What's driving that, do you think?
I think Italy is just a region that is pretty easy to fall in love with for many reasons. And, the cuisine, the culture, the vibe, the language. And so when people are traveling or want a second home, Italy comes to mind as one of the first places. Why not? And there's so many undiscovered regions that are kind of becoming more popular now, where we're seeing more hotels pop up, and I think you'll be seeing a lot more outside of the major cities. And, the next Puglia, what will that be? So balancing over tourism, but still trying to make sure that things are relevant.
Now, aside from all the beautiful openings you've had this year, you also have a new book.
Yes, you're holding our book right here as I can see this beautiful cover. We launched our book this year called Design to Stay. And the book is, no one actually knows what edition this is. We have lost count. I think we're on number 17. That's the rumor right now. But proudly showcasing all of our properties.
I love how varied the destinations are for design hotels. Are there some that you personally would love to meet the right person there, meet the right owners that you would really like to get into?
I would say, I think we have a real opportunity to do more in India. We're also doing some exploration in Greater China. So, of course, Shanghai, Beijing, the key cities, but also the cities outside of those key cities. There's also so much happening in the U.S., in places like, Charleston, cities that have really kind of become a new model for, young, lively, cosmopolitan lifestyle outside of the regular cities in the U.S. I think we need something in the countryside in the UK. So we're looking there.
Like Cotswolds.
Yes. Cotswolds, but
Lakes
Cotswolds
District.
done right. Exactly. Not stale and, just something design hotels. Again, it's about finding the right owner. People say, how do you choose a hotel? How do you know? And you go, when you know. You feel it. And that's really what the beauty is of the brand, is that you can't explain it.
I love that. Bringing that spark back.
Exactly.
Sarah Doyle of Design Hotels there, speaking with Monocle's Laura Kramer at the International Luxury Travel Market in Cannes. Thanks also to Monocle's Rebecca Alderson. Well, that's all for today's programme. Thank you to our producers Chris Chermak and Angelica Jobson, our researcher Joanna Mossa, and our studio manager Christy O'Grady, with editing assistance from Steph Chungu in Cannes. After the headlines, there's more music on the way. The briefing is live at midday London time. I'll be back with The Globalist at the same time tomorrow. I'm Vincent McAviney. Goodbye, and thank you for listening.
With UBS, you have a truly global partner, incorporating new technologies, innovative approaches, and unexpected opportunities, leading you to insights that help answer the questions that matter, delivered with passion, care, and unmatched expertise. Because it's about rising with the dawn each day, knowing that we can do even better. That's what banking is to us. Not just work, but a craft. UBS. Advice is our craft.